Thank you for joining us today, and we are glad that you are taking time out of your day to view this one-hour webinar. My name is Dave Helge, Vice President of Maintenance and Safety for Idealease. Idealease is committed to providing our customers and potential customers with safety and compliance information to assist you in enhancing your safety and loss control program. Due to the pandemic, we have canceled our on-site safety seminars in 2020 to protect the safety and health of our employees and you, our customer. In lieu of the seminars, we will be presenting 6 one-hour webinars over the next 3 months. Today's webinar is the third of the series. The topic for today is keeping your driver safe during a pandemic. Today we will look at best practices you can use to keep your driver safe while operating a commercial motor vehicle in a pandemic. Enjoy the webinar.
So keeping your driver safe during a pandemic, back in March, I didn't think we'd be discussing this. I thought this would all be over, and I think a lot of you had that perception of this pandemic, but we're in it for the long haul. And so today we're going to talk about your driver and the pandemic and how to keep them safe while doing their job. So there's 6 areas that we're going to look at today. When you hire a new driver, onboarding a new driver, going to take a look at that and then make some recommendations there, hopefully to help you out in keeping everybody safe. Road testing has presented a huge challenge during COVID. How do we road test a new driver? How do we make sure that driver meets our skill requirements in this type of environment? We'll briefly discuss COVID-19 employee policies. Hopefully all of you have an employee policy regarding COVID. That would cover all of your employees, just not the drivers. We'll spend a lot of time on protecting the driver during their operation, their daily activities, what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, and how we can keep them safe there. And then we'll look at sanitizing the truck, how to sanitize, what's the best process for that, what to use to clean that truck, what parts of the truck should be cleaned. And then we'll end up this webinar with a review of some federal regulations that have changed, or there's exemptions in place, or just activity that's changed by the FMCSA due to COVID. So we'll start out with hiring a new driver. In this world we're in, COVID doesn't stop the normal activity of what happens at your operation. I mean, you're still hiring drivers are still terminating. It's just that now, how do we do that in this environment? So if you are having applicants come to your place of business, hopefully you've got a process in place about visitors to your locations and what needs to happen there. But the first thing I would do is offer them a mask and a hand sanitizer if they do not have a mask on already, to the applicant prior to filling out an application if you're using paper. Obviously, the best thing to do here would be to use an electronic application, to have that application already electronically. Fortunately for all of us, COVID does not go through the cloud or do any of that. So anything we can do electronically without human touch is the best. So prior to completing the application, have the applicant complete and sign a COVID information document. I know at our office and our locations, everyone has to sign a document, basically 3 questions. Do you have symptoms? Have you been in contact with anyone that has had COVID? Have you tested positive for COVID? Basically those 3 questions signed. And then I always recommend that with applicants that you interview the applicant, right? And have a designated sanitized area to do that. I would not recommend you doing that in your lunchroom or your office, anywhere that your employees would normally congregate, or you yourself would be. It'd be nice to do that in a small conference room, somewhere that you could easily sanitize and that really wouldn't be exposed to the rest of your employees. Right along with the onboarding of a new driver comes the road test. And as I said earlier, this has been a challenge. I'm going to talk about 3 different options that you could use in this road test. First and foremost, I am a big believer in road testing. If you've been to one of our seminars, I get up on my soapbox about road testing. There is a lot of benefits to road testing today. The first option, I just need to let you know it's there by regulation for CDL drivers. Now, this is CDL licensed drivers only. You can accept this driver's CDL in lieu of a road test. That's explained in CFR 391.33, and you would not have to road test the driver by regulation. This does not apply to double, triple trailer or tank vehicle endorsement drivers. So it is there. I've always voiced my opinion against taking this exemption, but in this environment, if you've got an applicant that maybe you have personal knowledge about their driving and you feel comfortable with the past employment inquiries and who you've talked to, you know them well, and I may use that, but probably not. I still, to protect our liability, I would recommend that you road test the driver. Now, that was CDL licensed drivers. The regulations still stipulate that for a non-CDL driver, that a road test must occur. So there is another exemption that if the applicant provides documentation of a road test from another company within the previous 3 years, that you can accept that in lieu of the road test. That very, very rarely happens. In the seminars, we always ask how many people have accepted that, and you'll see maybe 1, 2, or 3 in a year out of thousands of people that attend the seminar. So the second option you have would be to have a pre-designated road test established and follow the driver applicant in a different vehicle behind them, automobile, another truck, whatever, talking to them on a hands-free cell phone while observing their driving. So you couldn't personally witness what's going on inside the cab, but you can see how they're controlling the vehicle, turning, stopping, braking, all of that from behind. And then the last option, and I know a lot of our customers are taking this is the administering the road test with somebody in the passenger seat, observing the applicant operating the vehicle. The regulations stipulate that the person that is administering the road test must have the knowledge to assess the skills of the driver. That's it. Doesn't say that the driver has to be licensed, or the person administering the road test has to be licensed to operate that vehicle. They just have to have the knowledge to assess the skills of the driver. So I would strongly recommend that who's ever in that vehicle administering the road test it can drive that vehicle. There's a number of reasons for that. One is if the administrator doesn't feel that the person's operating in a safe manner, they can take them out of the seat and at least get the vehicle back to the terminal facility. So anyway, the other thing is that when we talk about having the knowledge to assess the skills of the driver, if that's a CDL licensed driver doing the administration of the road test, they've had to take a knowledge test to have that CDL license and successfully pass that. So that kind of meets that requirement as well. Make sure that the unit is sanitized prior to road test and then after. I don't know, in today's environment, if you could designate a unit, if you've got one that you can designate for road tests only, that may be easier with the sanitization process, but whatever. It's just make sure that it's sanitized prior to and after the road test. Like I said at the beginning, I hope that each and every one of you have a employee policy in place regarding COVID-19, because this really doesn't just address drivers, it addresses all of your employees. That should address things like symptoms of COVID, what to do if you test positive, quarantining, interaction with the other employees, meetings, all of that, customers, how to handle that. Everything should be done in that policy. There's some policy templates and recommendations available from the CDC, and you can see there's a website there for the CDC, and you can take a look at that. They've got a wealth of information available to businesses regarding policies and procedures. So during operations, this is probably the area we're going to focus on here today, is when your driver is operating that truck, how do we keep them safe, from the virus? First and foremost, the driver needs to understand he needs to view his truck cab inside that truck as his safe haven. Okay, don't let anybody else inside there. Keep that to yourself and limit the time spent outside the truck cab, especially during fueling, loading, unloading, rest stops, truck stops, those kind of things. That truck cab to the driver is their safe haven. Limit close contact with others by maintaining a distance of at least 6 feet when possible. Use paperless electronic invoicing for fueling, deliveries, and other tasks when available. And we're seeing this evolve. The other day I was at a large box store that I normally would hand somebody my membership card and then my credit card to pay for it. They don't even touch cards anymore. They don't want to touch cards. So nobody wants to touch something that some other human being has touched. Keep in mind, the CDC says, like on a hard surface, the virus can stay alive for up to 72 hours. And that's the reason for that. That's why nobody wants to touch anything that someone else has already touched. Contact facilities in advance to your customers to make an appointment for unloading of cargo or loading of cargo. And then the other thing that the driver should be aware of, that they may not have access to the restrooms at those customers' facilities that they used in the past, so they have to make other arrangements for that. Use radio or phone to talk with dock managers or other drivers when at all possible. Stay inside that safe haven. Use your phone to talk to your customers, delivery folks, those kind of people. And then finally, the driver should plan in advance for snacks, lunches, water, supplies to limit the number of stops. I know this kind of goes against everything as far as keeping this economy rolling, but there again, we need to limit their interaction with other human beings. As we look at the image of a driver today, it has been escalated. That image, as we saw the virus evolve, you saw news, our own industry leaders, everyone, hold up the driver. The driver is our frontline defense. They're providing the food, the medical supplies, medicine, everything that's needed for the world to operate during this pandemic. And if you haven't thought about it, I certainly have since March, oh my, where would we be right now today if the trucks stopped running, say April 1st? Well, where would we be? What if the trucks all got shut down, drivers quarantined, everybody just, and there would, it would bring this economy to a grinding halt, and it would seriously impact our way of life today above and beyond what COVID has already done. So to the drivers, they're out there on the front line. We just need to keep them safe. As far as PPE, personal protective equipment, the driver should have at least 2 masks in their truck. And I always say 2 masks because you don't know what can happen to a mask. It could, a strap could break. It could get dirty, whatever, sweaty. It's better off to have 2 masks in there available. And the other thing is, besides the mask, use gloves to facilitate fueling. Well, I know a lot of drivers do that anyway because those nozzles get pretty nasty. But now with COVID, we should have the gloves on. You can be wearing the latex, disposable gloves. You should have gloves inside that truck just in case you've got to touch something with your bare hands. And that way you can get gloves on. If you are touching anything with your bare hands, use a hand sanitizer afterwards before operating your truck. At the end of the day, clean all the hard surfaces on the truck with an approved CDC sanitizer. Again, you need gloves on, either rubber gloves, reusable rubber gloves, or disposable gloves. Clean the door handle, steering wheel, shift controls, air brake knobs, everything inside that cab that you are touching that is a hard surface. So when are the key times to clean hands? And we've got these listed here for you. Before entering and leaving the cab, including deliveries. Like I said, if you've touched anything with your bare hands, loading and unloading cargo, rest breaks, fueling, and other activities. Before eating or preparing any type of food that you're going to eat, if you brought a sandwich with you in your truck, now you open that up, make sure you sanitize your hands before you do that. after putting on, touching, or removing your cloth face covering, your mask. If you have to blow your nose, cough, or sneeze, not a bad idea to use a hand sanitizer. And then, of course, after using the restroom. So it's very important that throughout the daily operation that the driver is practicing good sanitization, hygiene, keeping their hands clean, and wearing their face mask when they come in contact with any other human being. Now, a lot of the states have face mask regulations where if you're in public, you need to have that on. You cannot safely distance within 6 feet. You have to have that mask on. I would make it a company policy that once you're outside the truck, that you need to have your mask in place. So sanitizing the truck, let's take a look at what should occur when we should sanitize that truck. And I mean a full sanitization of the truck, just not the hard surfaces that the driver touches on a daily basis, but completely sanitize the truck. New driver is assigned a unit. That full unit should be sanitized before we put that new driver in that truck. Anytime someone besides the driver is inside the unit, that unit needs to be sanitized. So if it's out for service, another driver takes that unit for 3 days for a route because your driver was out on vacation, then that unit, before it's returned back to that driver, needs to be sanitized. When a driver tests positive or has symptoms of the virus, it is strongly recommended that unit be sanitized. And then again, before the driver returns to a unit after being tested positive for COVID or being off for a COVID type symptom. So that's just some recommendations when we should be sanitizing the truck. So as I mentioned earlier, what is the best method for sanitizing the truck? When we're talking about sanitizing the entire inside of that cab, not just the hard surfaces that the driver touched, vapor sanitization is the best effective way of sanitizing unit because it addresses both the hard and soft surfaces. The vapor sanitization is the best because it gets its way into the soft materials, say the bunk mattress, the seats, the soft surfaces the vapor attaches to and cleans. Whereas if we're just wiping with a cleaner, that's pretty hard to do on the soft surfaces. So vapor sanitization is the best. The American Trucking Association has recommendations on vapor sanitization if you want to do it yourself. I'm not a fan of that. It requires chemicals and a bunch of stuff going on, and I think in this situation, you probably should hire a sanitization service to vapor sanitize trucks. They're out there. I know there's one that we use at our locations. It's the best, fastest, easiest way to do. The vapor sanitization takes literally 10, 15 minutes and then it's done. So, like I said earlier, the CDC also says that on the hard surfaces, the virus can stay live for up to 72 hours. So keep that in mind as you're sanitizing the truck. Use reusable or disposable gloves when cleaning hard surfaces with approved disinfectant. There is the website to the end list from the CDC as far as what products, disinfectants to use to fight this virus. So let's take a look at just some of the things we should be cleaning. I've got it listed here as outside the truck, and then the next slide is inside the truck. So some of the things we need to take a look at, the key and key fob, we never think about that, but that's being touched all the time. Door handles, grab handles, hood latches, hood pulls, fuel caps, diesel exhaust fluid cap if that's been used, and oil dipstick. So with the straight trucks, medium duty, you take a look at other items that could be touched. It would be rear box grab handles, lift gate handles and locks, lift gate control switch. And then with the tractors, you take a look at airline glad hands, trailer electric cords, fifth wheel latch handles, those items that are specific to a tractor only. And then we move inside the truck, steering wheel, inside grab handles, seat belt, obviously gear shift, window controls, mirror controls, armrests, all of that needs to be taken a look at, as well as, anything in there the driver touched, the ELD screen, all those things that need to be cleaned inside the truck. Lastly here, I just want to discuss 4 regulations that the FMCSA has either granted exemptions to or made recommendations, etc., due to the fact of COVID-19 in our operations. So the first one we're going to talk about is the FMCSA gives drivers more time to renew medical cards and driver's licenses. The FMCSA has given an exemption to drivers and to the states regarding medical certifications and driver's licenses that have expired after March 1st. And this exemption was to expire on June 30th of 2020. Obviously, we're past that date. It's extended now through September 30th, which is coming right around the corner. And so, just pay attention. We'll see if that exemption gets pushed out even further. So what does the exemption do? So if your medical certification expired on or after March 1st, and you were not able to get that recertified, that you can still continue to operate with an expired medical certificate as long as it was valid on February 29th of 2020, the day before March 1st, of course, then you will be able to operate until September 30th of 2020. Obviously, if you can get that medical certification renewed, that's the best thing to do. Go ahead and do that. It's not only are you in full compliance with the regulations at that point, you still are with the exemption, but now you've got your examination completed, and now you're typically good for another 2 years, depending on your medical condition, but you're good for 2 years. Now let's take a look at the driver's license. So again, if your driver's license was valid on February 29, 2020, and it expired or was downgraded due to a lapse in medical certification since March 1st, 2020, you're now given out until September 30th. You can operate with that expired license, even if it has an expired medical with it, through September 30th. Again, we'll just have to watch as this virus continues to evolve. We'll see if that gets pushed out any further. Then the next one that I want to talk about is the FMCSA may take extenuating circumstances into account for random testing in 2020. Random testing has, or drug testing as a whole has been, drug and alcohol testing has been a challenge this year because of the healthcare industry being challenged with COVID. Some of these medical examiners have stopped doing medical examinations for drivers. As a result, the agency may exercise its discretion when enforcing the minimum annual random testing rates and the requirement to administer the random tests reasonably throughout the year. However, this is not a pass on random testing. You still need to be able to administer those random tests. If for some reason, say you're in a remote area and your testing site that was the only one closest to you was closed or had a shortage of testing personnel or possibly a shortage of personal protective equipment, then you as the motor carrier would document the circumstances along with the actions taken to find an alternative testing site. So those are the extenuating circumstances. If you get into an interaction with the FMCSA or enforcement, they can exercise discretion when enforcing those two different areas of the drug and alcohol testing regulations. Right along with that, they have issued a new waiver for pre-employment drug testing. There's always been a waiver in place if a driver would leave your employment and return within a 30-day window from the time of termination. There's a waiver that you could exercise that would waive the pre-employment drug screen. That is waiver exists today. What this new waiver did was extend that to 90 days. This was all based around carriers furloughing drivers or laying drivers off or otherwise not working for the company for more than 30 days. Early on, if you laid off 75% of your driver force and then decide to bring them back 60 days later as you got things worked out or as the business came back, that would be a huge expense to you to retest all those drivers. So this exemption allows you to waive that new employment drug screen if they come back within 90 days of the date of termination. With all that said, it's still your prerogative, your decision as the employer. If you don't want to use this exemption, and that if a driver terminates, it doesn't matter if it's for 1 day or 6 days or 89 days, and they come back that they have to have a pre-employment drug screen, that is perfectly fine. Hazardous materials endorsement. So we talked about that the FMCSA has extended expired driver's licenses out to September 30th. The hazmat endorsement, however, is not regulated by the FMCSA. It is regulated by the Transportation Security Administration. They're the ones that control the hazmat endorsement. And they have gone on a different path as far as an exemption. And what they're saying is that the HM endorsement can be extended by 180 days as long as the expiration of the endorsement is between March 1st and October 29th, 2020. So this extension does not stop at March 29th of 2020. This one continues. So realistically, if your hazmat endorsement would expire on October 29th, this would get you 6 months out, roughly 6 months out, 180 days past that, where you could continue to haul hazardous materials with an expired hazmat endorsement. There's one catch to this, and that is that the driver with an expired hazmat endorsement must initiate the process of renewing his or her hazmat endorsement no later than 60 days before the end of the state granted extension. So you just need to make sure if your hazmat endorsement has expired and you're going to use this extension, that 60 days before that 180-day extension ends, you have to make sure that you have started or initiated the process of renewing your hazmat endorsements. Drivers with a hazmat endorsement should confirm state-specific regulations concerning any extensions. Make sure that your state is following that from the TSA.
Now that we have concluded the webinar, I would ask that if you have any questions about the material we covered today, that you please email me. Our next webinar in the series will be on September 23rd, and we will address new hours of service regulation changes and the ELD. I will leave up my contact information for you to email questions that you may have. The registration link will also be there for you to register for a future webinar. Thanks again for attending the webinar. Stay safe and take care.